When it comes to the conquest and colonization of America, one name comes to mind: Spain. It receives none of the glory, but gets all of the blame despite the participation of various nations. Spain would forever be associated with the conquest of America, hence the phrase Spanish conquest, and not the French or British conquest. Mainstream American history has been told from a Spanish conquest perspective, portrayed from a very biased point of view, usually casting the Spaniards as the villains, and the reason for all the atrocities that happened to the Native American and later the so-called African slave. The story of Columbus and Cortez is amplified, and historians usually fast forward to the fall of the Spanish Empire, followed by the rise of the American Revolution and formation of the United States, showcasing the United States as a savior of the Americas and the vanguard of freedom and liberty from the tyranny of Spain. Half-truths, envy, confusion, and a false perspective on American history has resulted in an identity crisis for some Hispanic Americans, causing many that grew up under an American educational system a sense of denial of Spanish ancestry. When reading popular textbooks or viewing outdated documentaries on American history, Spanish Americans are fed images of slaughtered Indians and enslaved Africans, and most often want no part of that legacy. Also, this overly exaggerated view of the so-called Spanish conquest is sometimes used as talking points by Americans against Hispanics who exhibit Spanish pride, in an attempt to minimize the ancestry, contributions, and role of Hispanics in American history. Hispanics still face false propaganda and biases, being told that they are the descendants of invaders, rapists, brutes, white supremacists, conquistadors, and enslavers. In times of personal and political hostility towards Hispanics, Central and South Americans are told, go back behind the border. Puerto Ricans are told to forget the Spanish culture and integrate into the mainstream society. Cuba is demonized as a communist state and harborer of wanted criminals. And Dominicans are routinely accused of being anti-black. This propaganda comes from one source, the US media, which broadcasts these ideas across the world. The North American viewpoint on early colonial history is that African and Indian slaves created the foundation under harsh bondage, while the Spanish contributed nothing to Latin American culture. Spanish food, music, and culture, according to some, it all came from Indians and African slaves. For Hispanic Americans, African and Indian ancestry is praised and promoted, but Spanish pride is highly frowned upon and discouraged. Those without a strong sense of Spanish identity and culture end up denying a major part of their genetics and face a constant internal battle for self-identity. Much of this confusion and distortion of history has its origins in the old black legend. What is the black legend? Black legend, Spanish leyenda negra, term indicating an unfavorable image of Spain and Spaniards, accusing them of cruelty and intolerance, formerly prevalent in the works of many non-Spanish and especially Protestant historians. Britannica.com, Black Legend definition. What is the significance of the black legend? First described by Julian Jadaris in his book, The Black Legend and Historical Truth. The black legend is a style of propaganda that criticizes the Spanish Empire. According to Vintage News, published by Brad Smithfield, the black legend was propaganda that demonized Spanish people and Spanish culture all around the world. The propaganda campaign increased in energy as the House of Habsburg that ruled Spain pushed new ideas. Aside from the Dutch, the English, French, and Germans had their own reasons for spreading harmful rumors about the Spanish. Their collective effort pushed forward a narrative in which the Spaniards were depicted as villains, denounced them for being wicked, base people, and that as they established colonies around the New World, they also enslaved and robbed the land's indigenous people. Envy, falsehoods, and exaggerated tales of conquest portrayed Spanish people as the villains in American history. But is this an accurate account of what really happened? In an article written by David Ewing Duncan for The Atlantic, he says that the 17th century propaganda found its basis in real events which occurred during the Spanish colonization of the Americas, which involved atrocities, but it often employed lurid and exaggerated depictions of violence, and it ignored similar behaviors by other powers. What slander was used to describe the Spaniards? Let's see. Elvira Roca Berea argues that referring to Spain as part of the Pigs or Gypsy group of countries is a recourse to anti-Catholic and Hispanophobic stereotypes in order to protect the financial interests of Protestant countries. The so-called Gypsies, who are native to Spain and a very distinct and unique culture that survived over hundreds of years, have a similar look and culture to certain populations in Mexico. Here's an image of a Mexican woman in a traditional dance, side by 8 gypsy women doing similar dance routines. How was the historical relationship between Moors and Spaniards used as propaganda against Spain? What were the Spanish accused of doing to the Indians and Africans? In the book, What Does the Black Legend Have to Do with Race? Rereading the Black Legend, historian Walter Mignolo has argued that the Black Legend was closely tied to ideologies of race, both in the way that it used the Moorish history of Spain to depict Spaniards as racially tainted, and how the Black Legend was used to symbolize the moral character of the Spanish in the way they treated Africans and Native Americans during the Spanish colonial period. So many authors agree, including Samuel Amago in his work Black Legend in Contemporary American Cinema. He explains how these historical images explains why Spaniards make good bad guys. Why the hate? What was the motivation behind the Black Legend? During the early years of American exploration and colonization, almost all of the European nations participated in the Black Legend and fought against Spain. Authors agree that the Spanish Black Legend is anti-Spanish, anti-Catholic propaganda, which was originally a political and psychological weapon that was used by Spain's European rivals in order to demonize the Spanish Empire, its people, and its culture, minimize Spanish discoveries and achievements, and counter its influence and power in world affairs. So the true motivation of the Black Legend was to demonize Spain and its empire, but really to use this as motivation to take what it had established in the Americas, the Spanish Empire, what it had and what it had lost. Spain was the first to interact, intermarry, and legally protect the Native Americans. Despite of what we taught and believed, there was an ethnic diversity in Spanish colonies. So were courts, schools, churches, and the establishment of Christianity. The foundation of goods, products, trade ports networks that other European nations also benefit from was first established by Spain in the Americas. The Spanish coin, wealth, gold, and silver, this became the envy of other nations, which is the result of the Black Legend and the anti-Spanish propaganda. Civil wars, rebellions, and pirate attacks weakened the Spanish presence, which gave rise to other European nations. Then finally, the American Revolution marked the downfall of the Spanish Empire. So with that, I just want to leave that question out there in the air. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment in the comment section. Share some of your thoughts. This is your brother Dave Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. Hope you got some great insight, or at least can start asking some questions and challenging this narrative of what we call American history and the Spanish conquest.